And of those 3 voters, we're able to get 2 of the absentee ballot requests in Fort Valley. So, and then the comment side of this is what really is helpful.
All right, welcome everyone to our impromptu rally for Wisconsin Public Schools tonight. My name is Heather Dubois-Bernard. I'm Executive Director of Wisconsin Public Education Network, and we are here tonight because we learned with some great alarm that public education funding, much to our shock and disappointment, is on the cutting block tomorrow before the Joint Finance Committee. And we were hearing lots and lots of very angry and frustrated reactions to that, and thought we better call an all-state, all-team meeting to share our concerns, get the facts, and share a little bit of information about what we can do about it. So thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. For those of you who don't know who we are, Wisconsin Public Education Network is a nonprofit, nonpartisan advocacy coalition that works with folks around the state to just be better advocates together for the public schools our kids need, deserve, and are counting on, so that we can be a stronger collective voice when it comes time in moments like this to really lift them up and make sure that the needs of local kids are at the center of every conversation that we're having with decision makers. We do this not because we just love kids, but because every single kid in every public school deserves an equally excellent public education. That is not just an opinion, but our constitutional charge. And we know that we can afford to get there together, and we demand that it happens. We're here tonight to talk about the budget, but I just want to remind everyone before we begin that even though we're talking about money, it's all about the kids. Those dollars translate into educational experiences for our students and educational opportunities that cannot be provided until we fix some of the structural inequities in our system that are basically have been caused by poor budgeting in past years. So that's why we're here today. And we have invited our friend Chris Thiel, Legislative Policy Manager at Milwaukee Public Schools, to kick off this rally by telling us a little bit about what is actually happening tomorrow and what does it mean for Wisconsin students and their public schools. So Chris, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Heather. And thanks again for everybody for being here. We've had a lot of discussions over this last year that's been so hard. A lot of people have met to try to help your districts as we've gone through the pandemic. Everybody who's paying attention knows how difficult this has been for our kids, for our parents, for teachers, for our administrators, for school board members. We're all trying to do the best we can. Tensions have been high. And here we are, trying to get to the tail end of this school year and have something to look forward to into the summer and as we head into the next school year. If you've been part of this group, the Wisconsin Public Education Network, and we have as MPS for a long time, the strength here is that we're all in this together in a very real way. We regularly communicate with one another. We don't allow ourselves to be pitted against one another. We know success in one district to success in all of our districts. And that's really where our energy comes from. That's really where our positive support comes from when things are so tough. And it looks like we're heading into a tough spot tomorrow. If you have, paid attention, and obviously if you're here, you have, for the last 5 years, we've gone through, I don't know how many speaker task forces on education, whether it's the task force on rural schools or urban schools. And then some of you went to nearly every meeting of the speaker's blue ribbon task force. There have been, any number of opportunities for the members of this state legislature to identify what's really going on in our 421 school districts and the real needs, urban, rural, or suburban. We've seen reports about what we need. We know that we've had testimony where people tell us we have unfortunately fallen to the bottom in the nation in our support for kids with disabilities. We don't have a coherent policy to support kids challenged by poverty. We're last. We've been literally called by an expert pitiful when it comes to funding our English learners who need support across all our districts. And so there are so many things that we need support for. And then we have the governor's budget, which really took a hard look at what those needs are and funded them. And if you've been paying attention to kind of the budget process to date, you've probably seen a lot of the conversation about the Medicaid money and what taking that money would mean for freeing up opportunities in other parts of the budget. Obviously, we're at a point where that's not happening. But regardless, we are in a situation where we have real opportunity. At the end of every joint finance meeting so far over the last couple of weeks, the co-chairs have asked the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, what is our balance? How much money do we have to work with? And as we sit here today, the legislature has 2.5 billion with a B, $2.5 billion available as it's working through the budget. And not only that, we were concerned last week when we heard that this budget meeting was happening tomorrow, because with taxes delayed, with that date being pushed back to May 17th for when people could file, there's also been a delay in the next revenue estimate we will see from the Legislative Fiscal Bureau. And all signs at this point are very positive. So not only do we have 2.5 billion, but we anticipate in the first or second week of June that we're going to get another addition to that will tell us, hey, yeah, we have opportunities to do all these things to fund schools. And as you know, I mean, the federal money that's come down, a lot is being made of it. It's being, I think, manipulated for political purposes. These are dollars that have been targeted to support our districts. Districts have been spending money they don't have over the past year, whether you're hybrid or virtual or in person. Everything became just so much harder to run schools and do it properly and safely when the pandemic hit. So no matter what situation you're in, you are expending more than you budgeted last year in May. And so those federal dollars are not only meant to help with those costs, but to help accelerate kids who've had their learning disrupted. So it's not like free money. Those dollars are being looked at and budgeted for by districts across the state. So at this point, if you're a lobbyist in Madison or you're an advocate, you're trying to figure out what they plan to do tomorrow at the Joint Finance Committee. And it's usually this process where you're teasing out little bits of information to see what they might actually do, because it's in their hands. I mean, they will have an omnibus motion introduced tomorrow that has the detail of what the funding will be or will not be. But as Heather mentioned this morning, all of a sudden, the second in command of the state Senate, Senator named Chris Kapinga, came out and said, quote, "I think we're good. We're not going to spend any money." He in the article we saw in the Journal Sentinel, and then some follow-up comments from Speaker Robin Vos, it looks like they are literally talking about not funding anything, any increase, and maybe just little snippets of something here and there to kind of satisfy some legal requirements, it appears. But the fact of the matter is that, I was going through this today, trying to think of the logic of what's going on. It doesn't make any sense. Really, if you're a business manager or a superintendent or a school board member or a parent or anybody, you're looking at those statements and just wondering if these folks are in any way connected to how hard the work has been in all of our districts over the past year. And some people have said, this is just vindictive, this is just mean, this is illogical, whatever you want to do. But I give a lot of credit. I think the word that was used in a press release from South Milwaukee this afternoon is malfeasance. That this just is malfeasance. The state, as Heather mentioned, has a constitutional responsibility to fund kids. And, it's a bipartisan responsibility. And the basic minimum standard for what we have done in the state over the last 30 or so years was actually put in place by Governor Tommy Thompson, a Republican, who at least acknowledged, listen, there are going to be inflationary increases to keep up with costs in school districts, and we're going to make that a regular part of our budgeting process. So your district, our district, every district across the state since the early 90s has at least budgeted for this basic per pupil increase that matched the rate of inflation. And if you don't do that, you're in effect cutting kids, you're cutting programs, you're cutting schools, because your costs go up and the state is not taking on the responsibility for keeping up with revenue. So it's, you don't usually kind of get the full, in your face, we're going to give you nothing 2 days before the Joint Finance Committee, but that's what we're seeing today, and it's been corroborated by statements from other members of the legislature. The federal government bailed us out. The point of the COVID relief dollars was to bail us out. And if they do this tomorrow, they're just putting a hole in the boat. They're just putting a hole in every one of our districts. And as South Milwaukee has acknowledged and others have, you're going to see districts just trying to find a way, any way they can, to get the resources they need to keep up, just keep their nose above water. That's what we're talking about. And the reality is, listen, we've got the money, we've got more revenue coming. We've chronically underfunded our schools over the last 10 years. We've fallen below the national average in per pupil funding. We have clear evidence that there are areas of support that we need. We have awesome schools. We have awesome teachers. We have awesome parents and awesome kids. And we have a fantastic opportunity. Malfeasance is a pretty low bar, right? So we've got to get over that bar, but we've also got to accelerate into really helping our state and our communities and our kids. So you'll hear from people today. Put those calls into your superintendent, your board member, your legislator. Let's see if we can get any traction as we head into tomorrow. Let's maybe take a break over the weekend, but then jump back in it next week after Memorial Day weekend, because even if they vote for this at Joint Finance, it still goes to the floor and our voices need to be heard. And this may go into the fall, and we may need to press our case heading into next year as well. So thanks again for everybody for being here, and thanks for being partners, and let's do what we can to make this right.
Thank you, Chris, for that sobering update. I hope that everyone who's listening right now has a sense of the urgency of this moment. This is the single most important moment in the budget process, because it's when we find out what's really going to be voted on tomorrow after this meeting. And we hope that you're all paying attention. We heard loud and clear what the will of the people was throughout the budget hearing process. And it's clear that the gaps that were already existing have been made wider through the past year in this pandemic. And one of the people who shared some testimony on that over the course of those proceedings was our partner, Pablo Muirhead from Shorewood School Board. And we've invited Pablo here tonight to just share a couple of his concerns about what's going to happen this week and why it's so important for folks to take action. Pablo, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight at this critical juncture. As I was thinking about what I would share with you, the first thing that came to mind was the important connection between our morals and how they should be reflected in the budget, because after all, budgets are moral documents. And this budget needs to reflect the values of our state. So sit with that for a moment. Budgets are moral documents. Sit with that for a moment and let me tell you just a little bit about the impact. As a school board member, we're actively working on building out our budget for next year, and every year it seems to get more and more difficult, and that anxiety about what will be funded and waiting for the games to be played in Madison to see where the chips will fall it's incredibly aggravating for administrators, for teachers, for families, and ultimately who's paying the price? Our kids. Right? As we fight to sustain programs that some are hanging by a thread. As Chris so eloquently shared, sadly, we are one of the worst, if not the worst, in the state in terms of funding English language learners, special education students, kids in poverty. Sit with that for a moment. Budgets are moral documents. And now with this robust surplus that we have, and counting. What was that, Chris? We're at 2.5 billion and counting. They're going to get the final numbers at the end of June. So all bets are that it's going to be significantly higher, but let's just pause at 2.5 billion. And the proposals in this budget, finally bringing special ed funding up to something that's equitable. Special education, the needs of our special ed kids will always be met. That is not only a moral imperative, but it's also a legal imperative. And school districts, all 420 of us across the state have been busting our butts to make sure that we meet the needs of our kids who need special education assistance. But where does that money come from? We have to pull it from the general fund, right? We have to do right by our most vulnerable. Yeah, but these cuts continue and continue. And now we have a budget that finally didn't seem to be a partisan effort. It was bipartisan. After all, advocating for our kids should not be a political thing, but it's become that. Budgets are moral documents. As we brace for the summer in our school district, I'm sure it's very similar to the other 419 school districts in the state. It sickens me to see how out of sync the leadership and the Joint Finance Committee, out of sync their values are with the rest of the state, and what that says about the budget that they want to put out. All you need to do is look at the Marquette polling on how special ed funding goes. All you need to do is look at polling and how people love and value their public schools, right? Our 420 districts that represent 420 very unique and distinct communities. Now, Chris Kapanga is proposing turning us into 72 school districts. So I know I'm coming at it from my own school board perspective and grappling with our budgets, but this 0% increase, not even meeting the low bar of that inflationary rate that Tommy Thompson built in. I don't know, all I can leave you with is budgets are moral documents, and we as a state are failing our kids.
Failing our kids should not be an endgame result of the passage of any state budget, but especially one where we're in a fiscal position to do so much better, and we have no excuse not to. We need to close these gaps. And the only way that we're going to close these gaps is by being aggressively, aspirationally, emphatically pro-kid in every single budget that we pass in this state. We have so far to go to get from a broken status quo to something that really works across the state that we need to start with this budget. We cannot wait 2 more years. We cannot wait 4 more years. We cannot wait for another election cycle. Our kids are in our schools right now, and they're not going to get a second chance at being kids. Call your lawmakers and take action now. We've put together a little toolkit for you tonight that gives you 5 ways that you can really take immediate action, both in this moment and for the long game, to make sure that we really close these gaps and do our part to come together and take action. If you point your camera at this QR code, you can open the link. I think Christian will probably put the link directly in the chat for us too, if you could, please. And you can follow along. But the first thing that we want to ask you to do is just pay attention to what's happening tomorrow and speak up. Contact members of Joint Finance tonight and tomorrow morning. CC your own representatives. Let the governor know you're counting on him to sign only a budget that really works for our students as well. And then tomorrow when Joint Finance meets, bear witness. Go to the Capitol if you can. Sit safely, socially distanced from others, wear your mask, and be there in your Go Public gear, making sure they know that we're listening and watching and paying attention and spreading the word, and then amplify what you hear. I'm going to pass it over to Christian now to walk us through a quick digital action that you can take to get that message out. We've got a couple of tools ready to go for you, and he's going to tell you how you can make this one work.
Okay, thanks. So the most public way and quickest way to show that you are telling the Joint Finance Committee that you support a pro-public state budget and that you hope that they will completely reverse what has been signaled and put forward a budget that reflects Wisconsin's priorities for public schools is by tweeting at the co-chairs of the Joint Finance Committee. So everybody that has a Twitter account can point their phone camera at the QR code on this slide. They could also visit our website in a couple places, wisconsonnetwork.org/budget, wisconsonnetwork.org/digital, or go to the link that I'll put directly in the chat when I'm done speaking here. But when you do so, you will open your Twitter account after pointing your phone at that QR code, and it will autofill the tweet that's on this slide right here. It tags Senator Markline and Representative Bourne, who are the co-chairs of the Joint Finance Committee, and tells them that you support a 50% plus special ed reimbursement rate, increases to per pupil spending and revenue limits, and it tags us so that we can amplify your message. So I've autofilled that tweet. I'm clicking tweet, and now I have tagged the Joint Finance Committee chairs. And if a lot of people do that in the next 12 hours, it may or may not actually result in a change tomorrow, but it will become even more publicly available that Wisconsin overwhelmingly supports a pro-public education state budget. And we will put a direct link to that auto-filled tweet in the chat as well.
Thank you so much, Christian. And I just want to add here that the budget talking points that we've come up with as a network aren't things that we just invented in some back room somewhere. We're just reporting back and reflecting back what we have heard at all of the hearings that we've attended across the state and what has already been proposed, as Pablo said, by the Bipartisan Blue Ribbon Commission on School Funding. So we know what kids need. The question is, why aren't we providing it? Here's the second thing that you can do today. Just get the facts. If you haven't already, talk to your local school district, your superintendent, your board members, your business manager, find out what the priority needs in your district actually are, and then make a plan to stand up together and do something about it. When we come together and make it local, tell our stories in a way that really resonates, not just with people where we live, but with our own lawmakers, we're amplifying the needs in a way that makes sense and makes it real and makes it not just about dollars, but about kids. So let's share those facts and what they mean for local students as widely as possible at every single level that we work and live in, whether you're a parent, an educator, a board member, or an administrator. And we've got a couple of awesome examples of districts that have been doing this right now. The first is South Milwaukee. The link to this is in that document that I shared, but today South Milwaukee's administrator put out a statement on the state budget. And we've invited Doug Perry, one of their school board members here, to tell us a little bit about that because he couldn't join us tonight. So Doug, I'm gonna kick it over to you. And I think I saw your business manager, Blaise Paul, enter the meeting too. So if Blaise wants to share something as well, tell us about the statement you put out and why you did that.
Thank you, Heather, and thanks everybody that's here. So I have to give credit to our business manager, Blaise Paul, and Superintendent Dr. Jeff Weiss. And Blaise, if you would step in, I mean, and just kind of give your 2 cents, I would appreciate it. Otherwise, I can give a quick synopsis. Blaise, I see you're in the call.
Yep, I don't know if I'm showing up. I'm at a baseball game. Can you hear me?
Can.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Really. We just, looking. We were blown away. We met with our representative yesterday, Representative Rodriguez, and it was kind of shocking to hear really directly that it would be no increase in the per pupil for the revenue limit, no increase for categorical special ed, with the exception of putting a little bit more money in there to get it to 30%, which we know it'll fall down because it's going to be some certain allocation. So that was, I guess, really shocking to hear when there's $2 billion available at least in the next biennium. And I think if it was possible, more shocking to hear that we should be using one-time ESSER funding really to put money towards our budgets in the next 2 years. And that makes no sense. That's actually complete misuse of one-time funding to sustain programming with federal money to to the degree that they're recommending is it Chris Thiel used the word malfeasance, and when you put it in our press release, it is malfeasance. That is completely irresponsible, especially given we're in a time where there's money available and we should be putting that towards our priorities. I agree 100% with Pablo. Budgets are priorities and moral statements, and education obviously isn't one of them right now in the budget that will be going forward to joint finance tomorrow with regards to education. So that was, and the other big thing is relying on referendum to fund school districts is just an awful way to create good education. You need referendum for items that are not ongoing expenses, for building schools and doing things that are more on the infrastructure line. If you're gonna rely on referendum to fund schools, you're gonna have a lot of have-nots and haves that are going to create even more inequitable education opportunities throughout the state of Wisconsin, which is the last thing we need.
Numbers of people now.
Well, I just want to thank you both and Superintendent Jeff Weiss for the strong leadership that you showed in issuing such a strong statement. It is really exemplary and does not mince words. And we need more districts to take strong stances like that if we really want to convey the urgency of these moments. So bravo to you, and bravo also to the Beloit School Board for passing last night a resolution adopting the budget values that we've been advocating around this entire cycle. Megan Miller put together an awesome little video. We're running a little short on time here, and so we're just going to put that in the chat for you now, but we'll show it at the end if people have a minute to hang around and watch that as well too. We'll air it before we close out. The fourth thing you can do to get your message across that we need to do everything we can as a state to invest in the change our kids need is to just simply get organized. Whether you can join or form an advocacy group at the local level, finding a way to come together with others who share your passion, concerns, and values is really the best way to get organized and to make an impact. When we connect and learn from one another, when we take action together, when we form lasting relationships that give us the foundation that we need to really understand what the challenges are facing our kids and do something about it, that's how we achieve real change. That's what we try to do as a network, both where we live and across the state. And so we invite you to join us in being part of that movement to support Wisconsin kids, both where we are and across the state. So like Chris said, we aren't competing against each other for scarce resources, but working together to make sure that every single kid has access to an excellent public education, regardless of where in the state they live, what language their parents speak, whether or not they have a disability, or any other factors that influence their education. We need to level the playing field and close the gaps, and it really starts with us. We invite you to join us this summer when we hold our 7th annual Summer Summit. We're going to do it in person, but with a virtual option. It's only $25, and that includes a 6-week equity study leading up to it, where we're really going to dig into what can we do together to close these gaps, because this conversation does not end with this budget. It only begins there. So thank you for checking out these action steps. Look more deeply at that document that we've shared for details on how you can dig into each of these 5 points, and be ready next Tuesday for our next steps, because once we know what's really going to be in this budget, that's when we really have to put our relationship building skills to the test and contact our own lawmakers and make a big difference. So let's everybody hold up those signs that you brought today, and remember that when we come together, we can make a difference. Thank you for joining us. And if you're going to be at the Capitol tomorrow, I saw a question about this in the chat. I believe the hearing starts at 11 o'clock. It's likely to, usually what they do is they introduce the big bill and then they go on break and then they come back to discuss and vote. So be prepared for what could be a long day, but just being there to bear witness is helpful. It's hard to anticipate exactly how long it would take. I also want to let you know that our organizer, Denise, if you could just unmute yourself and say hey so that everybody can see what you look like.
Hi, everyone. I'll be there tomorrow with this shirt on, and I'll be ready to hand out some shirts in the lobby before we go to the joint finance room. So please look for me, and let's make a big show with these guys, okay?
And if you're looking to get a shirt and you can't make it tomorrow, we'll put the link in that shared document with the action steps on how you can order one on our website. Hold up those signs, everybody. Let's get a team photo. All right, thank you for joining us. So we look forward to working with you to close the gaps for Wisconsin kids. We thank you for your continued advocacy, and let's close out this meeting by listening to Megan Miller's words from Beloit about why they passed a resolution to stand up for fair funding.
Hi, my name is Megan Miller, and I am the president of the Beloit Board of Education. Last night, our board passed a resolution in support of the budget priorities outlined by the Wisconsin Public Education Network, which also reflect the budget priorities in our own district. I urge you to encourage your boards and your districts to take similar action. When boards and districts take action, it shows lawmakers that there isn't just individual support, but institutional urgency to address the unjust and unmet needs of children and families in our communities. I am Beloit proud that the elected officials in my community took the time to raise our collective voice in the best interest of our students and their families. We all have a duty to our students to show the state that we are serious about school funding and that we will take action. Go public.
Thanks for that, Megan, and thanks again to all of you for your time. We need to call on lawmakers to do their job and close those gaps. Together we can send that message. Together we can demand that change, and only together can we see it achieved. So let's go do this, Wisconsin. We don't have any other choice.